Salam everyone. Today I would like to address 3 questions concerning the Salah. The first question is about the Friday Salah. The second question is Surah 22 verse 40, where God uses the plural form Salawat. What is that all about? And then the third question is in regards to Surah 9 verse 84, I believe. 984, which talks about the so-called funeral prayer. First things first though, if you have not watched my video about Salah according to the Quran, I recommend that you do so before watching this video, because that video is considered a catalyst to all the subsequent videos I post concerning Salah. Now, the verse in question in regards to the Friday Salah is Surah 62 verse 9, where God says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع. O you who believe, when called to the Salah from the day of the congregation, then you shall strive for the remembrance of God and drop business. Here God talks about being called to the Salah. And based on the context of what we are reading, the entire Surah 62, it is evident that this verse is referring to the Salah Sessions. Again, please watch my video if you haven't done so. The Salah Sessions are simply during the time of the Prophet. The Salah Sessions were times where the people would gather around the Prophet so that he can recite or preach the Quranic revelations to the people. This is how he delivered the message of the Quran to the people. And according to the Quran, the Prophet was required to uphold at least 2 Salah sessions a day, Salatul Fajr and Salatul Isha, the dawn and the evening Salahs. Okay, so the Surah 62 verse 9 refers to the Salah sessions as an additional Salah session. And again, this is evident by the context. Simply reading the entire surah will give you that impression. However, the very first beginning of the surah talks about how God has sent down a messenger to recite his revelation. So that's our big hint there. So God here tells us, talks about how being called to the Salah, again, the Salah sessions. Then God says that this Salah session is on the day of the congregation, min yawm al-jum'ah. Yawm al-jum'ah. The word jum'ah means congregation. Traditionally, Arabs, as we know today, as we see it today, it's done during on a Friday. However, if we are being technical here, day of congregation refers to a day of congregation. It does not mean Friday necessarily. It can be any day of the week. And God specifically tells us that this congregation is in reference to a day of market or a market day, because he says drop business, okay, drop your business. So it's a day of market in which the people gather on that day. So the day of congregation can technically be any day of the week, depending on when your community or your society observes it. Now, so we have now we have a contextual and historical perspective based on the surah of what this congregational salah is about. Now, 2 questions arise here. The first question, is this an additional 3rd salah? As I mentioned, it is. It seems so. Remember that that once we understand that the Salah sessions have nothing to do with rituals, then we won't be so nitpicky about the number of salahs. The Quran gives us a minimum of 2 salahs a day, 2 salah sessions. However, if a person chooses to do more, there's no harm, there's no foul behind that. Why should it be? You are simply remembering God. You are simply reciting the Quran. There's no harm or foul behind that. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with having a 3rd additional salah. And obviously, historically and contextually, the surah, the God wanted the Prophet to preach the Quranic revelation during this time. So the second question that arises, though, and perhaps the most important question, is, are we required to observe this Salah session, the congregational Salah session, today? And the answer is, basically all we need to do is take the core value of what this congregational salah is. The core value of the congregational salah is just that, a congregational salah. It doesn't have to be on the day of a market or anything of that sort. It doesn't have to have that historical context behind it, okay? We're simply taking the core value from it, and that is to have a simple congregation with other believers. It doesn't have to even be once a week. This is, again, my opinion. All of this is my opinion. It doesn't have to be once a week. It can be a day in which you decide with other believers to have a congregation. So to be technical, this congregation doesn't have to even be physical. With our technology today, it can even be virtual. The idea is to congregate with other believers and to remember God, as the verse notes, and obviously it's to discuss the Quranic revelations, to have Quran studies, to recite Quran, and so forth. This is all that's the core value behind the congregational salah. So another question that arises is, what about the traditional Muslim mosques that observe the Friday salah here? Is it wrong to attend these Salah sessions or Salah rituals? And in my opinion, I know there's a lot of Quran alone followers, Quran alone believers who are very much against this, and I can see why. However, for me at least, I see no harm in if a person chooses to attend these. What matters really is your innermost intention. God knows your innermost intention. I personally don't have a problem going to a traditional mosque. I don't go, but I don't have a problem going if I have to or if I need to for whatever reason. I don't go simply because their Friday sermons tend to be un-Quranic. Okay, the topics that they cover is usually un-Quranic. So I get no benefit from going there whatsoever. But if a person chooses to go, I personally see no harm or no foul. Again, nobody can tell you to go or not to go. Nobody has the right to say that. It is entirely up to you. You judge based on what you understand from the Quranic text. Anyway, so to reiterate, the congregational salah is simply about congregating with other believers, whether be it physical or virtual online, to discuss Quranic topics or to recite Quranic revelations, to remember God. That's the basic essence of it, of the congregational salah. So hopefully that answers that question. Now, let's move on to the second question. Surah 22, verse 40. There's a phrase in there that is translated in an interesting way. God talks about 4 places. He says, لَهُدِّمَتْ صَوَامِعْ وَبِيَعْ وَصَلَوَاتْ وَمَسَاجِدْ, commonly translated as monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques. This is the common translation. Now, I don't see a problem with this translation. However, I would like to point something interesting out when we study the root definitions. Again, God talks about sawami', bi', salawat, masajid. The first word is sawami', comes from the root sama'a. Sama'a means a place of peaceful gathering. Okay? A place of peaceful gathering. A place in which there's peaceful gathering is considered a sawami' or a sama'a. Okay? So it's a place of peaceful gatherings. The next word is bi'a. Bi'a simply refers to commerce or selling or business. Okay, we can translate it as a market. Okay, so far we have places of gathering, places of market. Then the word that's ultimately in question is salawat, the plural for salah. Salah simply means to follow something closely or to adhere to something. So this could refer to any type of sports events, horse races, any type of races, amphitheaters, arenas of some sort, salawat. And it could also refer to perhaps government buildings, because they are following laws, correct? So they're establishing laws, jurisprudence. So far we have places of gathering. We also have places of gathering, market, amphitheaters or arenas. Then God says masajid, places of submission, submitting to God's laws. And this could be the so-called worship places. I don't believe in using the word worship, but let's just make it simple here. So the places of worship, such as mosques, monasteries, churches, or synagogues of that sort. So the masajid encompasses all these places of worship. So hopefully that answers that question. What I find interesting is that I think it was the Reformist translation. Adip Yoksel translated this verse in this same manner, which is very interesting. And I think he was pretty spot on in that particular translation. So hopefully that answers that question. Now let's move on to the third question, which is Surah 9, verse 84. I believe it's 84. Where God talks about traditionalists will tell you this is all about the funeral prayer. Now, the idea of a funeral prayer, those who have studied the Quran will know that once a person dies, and perhaps even when they're alive, you cannot intercede on behalf of anyone. Your prayers will not erase anyone else's sins or whatever in any fashion or form. So once a person dies, they are dead. You cannot do anything. So praying for them does no benefit for you or for them. So what is this verse really talking about? The verse reads, وَلَا تُصَلِّ عَلَى أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ مَاتَ أَبَدًا وَلَا تَقُمْ عَلَى قَبَرِهِ. And do not sully onto any of them if they died, and do not stand at their grave. Now the word sulli ala, the phrase sulli ala, there's a preposition there, ala, onto. Okay, so the sulli onto, follow closely onto them if they died. What is this referring to? It's not referring to some type of prayer. No. If we look at Surah 33, verse 56, where God says, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala an-nabi. God and the angels yusalluna onto the Prophet. They follow closely onto the Prophet. This phrase refers to basically creating a support system, a support mechanism for the person that is being addressed. So God here tells the Prophet, do not sully onto any of them if they die. Okay? So God is basically telling the Prophet, which he's referring to the hypocrites at that time. He's telling the Prophet, do not sully onto any of them if they died. In other words, do not show any support to their funeral. Okay, when somebody dies that you care about, or that you a family member or a friend, you attend their funeral. You should show support to their funeral. However, God here is telling the Prophet, if any of the hypocrites die, do not show any support. Then God tells him, do not even stand at their grave. وَلَا تَقُمْ عَلَى قَبَرِهِ. Do not stand onto their grave. Again, it's showing support to someone that died. You attend their funeral, you attend their burial, okay? And God here tells the Prophet, do not do those things if any of the hypocrites die. So that is all that this verse is talking about. It has nothing to do with any rituals, okay? And or a ritual prayer, I should say. Even then, you can ask anybody, well, where's the details of the funeral ritual prayer in the Quran? It does not exist. So anyway, hopefully I answered all three questions. Wassalamu alaikum.